Welcome back to Between the Verses, Episode 9. I'm Josh.
And I'm Maya, but you knew that already, right? Anyway, thanks for being here with us again.
If you've been walking with us for a while now, you'll know this is a space where we don't rush past the difficult parts of our Christian faith. We slow down, pose questions, and try to be honest about what belief looks like when it meets real life.
Yeah, because faith doesn't exist in a vacuum. It shows up in ordinary moments, in routines, pressure, tiredness, and sometimes in uncertainty.
Which brings us swiftly to today's topic. We're talking about doubt.
And to be clear, we're not talking about doubting ideas in a distant, abstract sense. We are talking about doubting your faith, doubting God, doubting whether what you believe still holds up when life feels heavy and confusing.
It's not the kind of doubt that announces itself dramatically. Usually it just kind of quietly shows up, like on a random Tuesday morning. Suddenly your prayers may feel they're going unanswered. You feel stuck, your faith more fragile than firm.
Yeah, we've all been there. And this connects to a lot of what we've already talked about on this podcast.
That narrow road from last week.
Right. Questions about struggle, about faith being hard but not hopeless, because doubt isn't the absence of faith or the opposite of it. It lives right alongside it, like two peas in a pod.
Nice. And of course, you see moments of doubt spread throughout the Bible. In the raw honesty of people who deeply loved God but still asked, are you really there?
So today, we're not here to fix doubt or shame it or push it away. We just want to talk about it and ask what it might be trying to tell us.
Exactly. So let me start us off with a question for you, Maya, and for everyone listening. When was the last time you doubted your faith in real life? Not in theory, but actually.
That's a heavy question to start with. For me, I admit I've had those moments, but it wasn't like suddenly my whole world falling apart. It was slower than that. It felt more cynical, I don't know if that's the right word, but ultimately it came from seeing things in the world that just felt deeply, deeply unfair.
So it wasn't an intellectual problem, it was an emotional one.
Yes, from stories in the news. Situations where it just seemed that power and cruelty always won over kindness. But I want to be clear, I didn't stop believing in God, but I started wondering how to hold what I believed alongside what I was seeing every single day.
And how do you go about reconciling those two things?
Well, it's not just reconciling, it's surviving the tension. It's lonely because in many faith communities, expressing any kind of doubt feels like a failure. It feels like you're breaking some unwritten rule, so you often keep it to yourself, which only makes it heavier. That's why the very apt and famous story of Thomas has always stood out to me so much.
We call him Doubting Thomas, almost as a criticism, but I see him so differently. So, just to set the scene a bit, even though 1000% our listeners are very familiar with Thomas, his defining story happens after Jesus is crucified. The disciples are scared and grieving. Everything they thought was going to happen didn't.
And then Jesus appears to them, alive. But Thomas isn't there when it happens, so he doubts Jesus was there at all.
But he doesn't begin to doubt to be difficult. He simply missed a moment, like he said. And when the others tell him, we've seen the Lord, Thomas doesn't lash out or mock them. He just honestly says, unless I see the marks in his hands and put my fingers where the nails were, I will not believe.
And that line gets used against him a lot. But let's face it, he was being practical. The world he lived in, well, it was brutal. Lots of false hope, people claiming miracles all the time. He was just being honest about his need. He wants to see and touch something solid to hold on to.
Something real, right? And here's the bit that always gets me. When Jesus appears again, this time with Thomas there, it's such a beautiful part of that story. Jesus' reaction. Jesus doesn't shame him for his doubting thoughts. He doesn't say you should have believed harder or your faith is weak. He meets him exactly where he is. He offers him his hands.
His hands, his pierced side, the very proof Thomas said he needed. And that tells us something very important about doubt. Jesus isn't threatened by it. Jesus doesn't push Thomas away for questioning. He invites him closer, which completely reframes doubt, doesn't it? At least in my mind.
It does. It turns doubt from something shameful into something very normal, very human, maybe even something that can lead to even deeper faith.
Thomas helped me realize that doubt is almost like faith trying to survive in the real world. Sometimes doubt is just honesty catching up with belief.
I love that. And it mirrors another story that comes to my mind that shows a completely different side of doubt. Elijah.
Oh, yeah, that's a very different kind of doubt.
Completely. Elijah is one of the great prophets, and in the first book of Kings, we see him witness something absolutely extraordinary. On Mount Carmel, he watches God send fire from heaven, an undeniable display of power. It's the kind of moment you'd expect to settle everything.
Clear proof. You'd think this is the moment his faith went unshakable.
Right, he should be riding that high. But almost instantly, he crashes. He feels threatened and runs for his life. And then, alone in the wilderness, he completely falls apart. He tells God he's had enough. He is done.
Which is such a shock when you think about what he just experienced.
Yes, but that's the point. Elijah's doubt doesn't come from a lack of belief. It comes from exhaustion and burnout, from caring too much for too long. And God doesn't respond by correcting him, he lets him sleep. And only after Elijah's rested does he speak to him, quietly and gently.
Not in fire, not in spectacle, but in a whisper.
Though Elijah's doubt came from fear in the moment.
Doubt can hit when we're scared and confused, like Thomas. Sometimes it hits when we're drained, like Elijah. But in both stories, God meets them where they are.
And that's why these stories still resonate, because the same patterns show up in us. You can start something with confidence, with purpose, and then reality sets in. The chaos of the world starts to creep in.
And doubt shows up, simply because you became aware of everything happening around you, the storm.
And these stories become even more interesting when we think about doubt beyond just faith. What about doubt in ourselves?
Let me ask you something then, Josh. When was the last time you doubted yourself? Not God, just you.
Oh, wow. Probably this morning. For me, that usually happens when I start comparing myself to other people. It's almost automatic. I start seeing others move faster, sound more confident, seem more certain about what they're doing.
The comparison trap, again.
Yeah, a common affliction, I guess. I start wondering if I'm behind, if I've missed something essential that everyone else got, if everyone else knows what they're doing except me. And that kind of doubt, it just creeps in so quietly. I've had moments, more than I can count, where I stopped trying something, not because I couldn't do it, but because I had convinced myself someone else would just do it better anyway, so why bother? But what helps me, slowly, is remembering that doubt doesn't have to mean stop. It just means pay attention. Pay attention to where your focus has gone.
And with Thomas, it's the same posture. Jesus doesn't rush him. He doesn't dismiss his need. He allows space. He allows time. He offers contact.
Both of the stories suggest that self-doubt isn't this enemy to be gotten rid of as quickly as possible. It's something to be moved through.
And I think that's where it starts to get personal. For me, with faith, doubting myself means allowing myself to be honest about what's troubling me, not feeling the pressure to solve it or explain it away. Just naming it. Saying, this part is hard. This doesn't make sense to me right now.
Just naming it. There's something about that. Doubt seems to lose some of its power when it's brought into the open, when it's spoken instead of hitting away in the dark.
I think you're right. And so, Josh, looks like we've come to the end of another episode.
I don't doubt it.
Right. And I hope we've given our listeners a little to digest and think about.
And each other too, My biggest take home from this episode, I think, is that doubt does not mean your faith is weak. It's actually a sign that you care, that you're paying attention to the world and people around you, and you're still engaged.
That's it. You're still in the game, you're still wrestling with the big questions. Like Thomas, you're reaching for something real.
Doubt isn't a detour from the journey. It's just how the path unfolds. A path where honesty matters more than certainty.
And you still gotta walk it.
You still gotta walk it. No stopping. Stay the course. Faith sometimes grows not through clarity, but through patience.
Amen.
So, a final word to our listeners. If things don't feel resolved in your lives for some reason right now, if your faith feels unsettled or tired or unfinished, that might not actually be a problem you need to fix.
It might simply be where you are right now. So just stay the course. You're not walking alone.
We're all in this together.
Thanks for sitting with us today. We had fun talking out loud about the things we care about.
And we'll be here next time on Between the Verses.